Hello, my name's Cathy, the Apprentice and Learner Coordinator at GrandirUK. Today I'm joined by our CEO, Lydia Hopper, and Lydia is going to talk to us about her career journey from a student to CEO. Firstly, thank you so much, Lydia, for spending the time with me today to tell me your story.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Cathy.
What motivated you to pursue a career in early years?
Do you know, Cathy, I have always enjoyed being around children, and right back to probably my earliest memory is about the age of 7, where, you know, when I was at school, my preference was to be in the playground with the reception children, with the little ones, supporting and helping. And actually, even as I grew up, I was a very shy child and not at all confident around a peer group and adults, but put me with a group of children and I was in my element. So actually it was often a good place to hide as I was growing up.
Lovely. So the children that gave you the confidence to sort of like pursue a career in early years.
Absolutely.
That's where it started.
Yeah.
So when you were at school, right from the age of 7, you knew that you wanted to work with children.
Yeah, it was always, there was never a question in my mind. I'm very lucky. I appreciate not everybody knows kind of what their journey is going to be, but right from that age, I was always saying, you know, Lydia, what are you going to do? I'm going to work with children. I'm going to be with children. I'm going to spend time with children. And that oscillated between I'm going to be a teacher to I'm going to be a nursery nurse to I'm going to be a nanny.
But you knew it was going to involve
children.
So talk me through your senior school, secondary school.
Sure.
Did you then go to college? Or?
So I took the college route. I did something called the NNEB, which was
a
nursery nursing qualification. And actually there was some question whether I was going to get the GCSE grades to get onto the course actually, because you needed to have maths, English and something else at C grade or above. And I wasn't the best student, but I did. I got onto the course, and the way it worked was college time for, you know, understanding child development, the theorists, all of that type of work. And then you'd have 2-week block placements in settings, and those settings ranged from a family home where there were triplets, they actually had chickenpox at the time, I can remember it, to a nursery placement, to a school placement, to a family centre where children are in care and are having contact with their families. So a real wide breadth of experiences of where children are.
And you really enjoy those places, the placement part of
Absolutely,
what you did.
Absolutely. The value of the placements is you're surrounded by children. You're in an environment where everybody wants to be there generally. You're having a great experience and actually you're learning in the real world what children do that you can't learn from a book.
I understand that, yeah. So what are your views on sort of the traditional route vs the apprenticeship route?
Yeah, do you know, Cathy, if I had my time again, I would do the apprenticeship route. And the reason I'll do that is because I've done the other route. So, you know, it's done me well. I learned a great deal. But what you learn from being in a setting is some of those skills that you can't learn unless you're in a setting. So one of the things I think we underestimate, particularly when we love children and we want to be with children, is their parents. And parents can sometimes be challenging if you've never worked with parents before.
You wouldn't get that in a
and you just wouldn't get that in a classroom.
Setting.
No, you don't get it in a
not.
classroom. So experiencing parents, and I didn't really get that experience until my first job, but experiencing parents and making sure they feel good about what you're doing with the children is really,
because you're
really
looking
important
after
for a
their
career.
most treasured possessions.
Absolutely, really important for your career. So I did 2 years at college and then my first job, but with the apprenticeship route, that learning I got in my first job, I would have got through the apprenticeship scheme. So it would have, you know, I'd have been that bit more experienced that year earlier.
So would you say those real life experiences, the apprenticeship gives you a whole holistic picture of what it is to be in early years, and it
both children, families, other practitioners, so people at different points in their careers, different leaders that you'll work with. It just gives you exposure to a breadth of opportunity, actually.
Understood. Do you think there were any pivotal moments when you first started working in early years that have shaped your career and have ended up to where you are now?
Yeah. Again, really interesting, because right through my career, the plan was I'm going to work with children, I'm going to work with children, I'm still going to work with children, I'm still going to work with children. Now, clearly, I did progress, and here I am now and have less interactions with the children, except for when I visit our nurseries. And I think actually one of the pivotal moments was I was working in a setting, and we had a practitioner who was partially deaf, and her experience up until this setting had been quite poor. So she'd always wanted to work with children, but she'd come up against a lot of prejudice because she was deaf, and people thinking that she couldn't possibly work in a nursery. And she really could, and she wasn't profoundly deaf, so she had hearing aids so she could hear. There were just certain tones she couldn't. And she was working in a baby room, and I worked with her over probably a 6-week period, talking about how to improve the baby room, how to improve some of the experiences, some of the things that she could do differently. And she soaked it all up, and she took notes, and she was a great practitioner, and she was resilient. And she was keen, and she was thoughtful, and she wanted to make a difference to the children. And I've always remembered her, and that moment is what drove me to believe that actually the influence that we can have around practitioners is going to be the benefit of the children and the families. And that young lady, Selena was her name, or is her name, she messaged me long after I'd left that setting, probably about 5 years after. She messaged me on LinkedIn actually, do you remember me? This is where we met you, this is what I'm doing now, really wanted to thank you. And actually I thanked her because she made a much bigger difference in my career than
was a two-way thing.
Absolutely.
She impacted on the way that you grew, and obviously you impacted on her growth. So who have been your mate? Obviously she was one of your main influences, I suppose. Have you had other influences that have helped you develop your career as you've gone along?
Yeah, I think so. I think I've been lucky enough to work with some really great leaders and some really poor leaders. And actually I consider myself lucky even when I perceive I've had a poor leader, because the opportunity to learn and grow and think differently comes from all of those interactions. And actually a leader that I worked with some years ago absolutely pushed me to do way more than I thought I was capable of. And that stretch, that push out of the comfort zone, just to think differently, to talk to a group of practitioners rather than a group of children, to interact in other ways, enabled me to do more and be more and build confidence. Because actually, a lot of a career journey comes from confidence. I believe it comes from, for me, it was, I'm making a difference. I want to be with these children, and actually these children make me feel confident because I'm really successful at this. I can be really great at this. I can make a massive difference in these children's lives, and building that confidence. And then as you have different roles and you expand your career into whichever path you decide to go, leadership or specific early years, that confidence and humility. So confidence whilst also being able to recognise we're learning. I am learning something every single day. Literally, there's something new that pops up that I didn't know yesterday. So having that level of confidence in yourself enables you to grow and grow and grow. And I think the moments in my time that build confidence came from children, came from people like the practitioner Selena that I talked about, came from a leader who really pushed me out of my comfort zone to where I sit today.
So it sounds like there's been some real, there's the pivotal moments, there's the influences, and there's also things that have sort of made you realise as you've gone along what you can achieve and the difference that you can make. What would be your advice to somebody wanting to take on an apprenticeship in early years? What would be your top tips?
Okay. Do you know, everybody says, and it's a bit of a throwaway comment, but people say, do a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. That is so true. I have been very blessed, very, very blessed that I always knew it was about children. That was what I was going to do. So work was never, oh, there's the alarm, I've got to get up, I've got to go to work. It was always I enjoyed what I was doing. I was with the children. And I think the early years, working with children, I truly believe is the best career in the world. It's tiring. It is really hard work. It is pretty stressful at times. And there are some challenges that come with it. But at the end of the day, you are making a difference to a child. And that positive impact you have goes with that child forever. If you've got time, let me tell you a quick story.
Yes,
about
definitely. I'd love to hear it.
When I was maybe 4 or 5, so I'm old, so we used to have milk in the day when I was at school, right? So you used to have these little balls of milk, and I must have been in reception. I was only little, and I can remember the feeling. There was a bottle of milk left, and the teacher said, would anyone like one? I put my hand up, and she said, okay, you can have one. As I reached across the table to get it, I knocked it over. And she shouted at me and was so cross with me. She said, you've wasted that milk. And I can remember, even as I'm telling you it now, it gives me goosebumps, right? I can remember how I felt. I can remember what that did to me. And from then, I never put my hand up in class again. That impact, so I'm all right now, okay? I can put my hand up. But that impact is significant. And people like that exist in this world. Now, I don't think that teacher deliberately did it to make me feel bad. She was probably having a really bad day, right? It happens to all of us. But that had a significant impact on 5-year-old me. And I believe that the difference we make in the early years, the practitioners in our settings, be them deputy managers, nursery managers, practitioners training, MVQs, apprentices, whatever level we are at, we are interacting with a child. And we are imprinting that child with memories and helping to create their future. And that's a really important job, and it's a really valuable job.
And is there any other industry where you get that fabulous opportunity to shape a little person's life, to perhaps become a CEO of a company? What a fabulous.
And do you know what? When I set out, Cathy, I never planned to be a CEO of an organisation, never in a million years. And the part I enjoy most now about this role is when I go out into our nurseries and I see our families and I see our children and I see our practitioners, and I know it's hard. I do know it's hard, but we make such a difference each and every day. It's a great career. It's fun. Who doesn't want to go to work and play?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm completely with you, Lydia, and I really appreciate you sharing everything with me today. And I'm hoping that other people can see how wonderful it is to work in early years, and it's something that you just don't get the opportunity to do elsewhere. So thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Anytime.
Thank you.